Good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, February 25th at 6:05, and we're ready to begin our regularly scheduled meeting of the Michigan City Plan Commission. Our first item on the agenda is a call to order, then we have the roll call. Good. What's that? Right.
Ms. Esbar? Mr. Dabney?
Present.
Mr. Gallus?
Here.
Mr. Granquist?
Present.
Mr. Klinger? Mr. Sperling? Here. Mr. Wright?
Here.
Mr. Zimmer?
Here.
Mr. Hill is absent. I believe we have a new member, Mr. Gresham. He is absent. Okay. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Skylar. We're going to waive reading policy of conduct and procedures, but have them inserted into the minutes. The next item is approval of minutes from the regular meeting from August 27th, 2019. I think everybody has a copy of them, and we didn't approve them in the past because we haven't either had a meeting or we haven't had a quorum. So now we need to approve them.
Would that be the January 28th minutes? Or we not have a quorum then?
Well, there's two sets of minutes.
There's two of them.
August
Oh, okay.
and January.
August 27th of 19 and January 28th of 2020.
I apologize.
Thanks. So I'm looking for a motion to approve August 27th, 2019 minutes.
I move to approve the minutes for August 27, 2019.
Second.
Mr. Dabney?
I wasn't ready to comment. I was just going to say, because of it, I did not attend that meeting in August 27th. I was going to abstain from the vote to approve.
Mr. Gallus?
Yes.
Mr. Granquist?
Yes.
Mr. Sperling?
Yes.
Mr. Wright? Mr.
I
Zimmer?
like the abstain. I wasn't here either for those.
Mr. Zimmer?
Yes.
Okay, we'll have to vote again at the next Plan Commission. We don't have enough.
I think so, yeah. So the next item would be then a motion to approve the minutes from the January 28th meeting of this year.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Mr. Dabney?
Abstain?
Mr. Gallus?
Yes.
Mr. Granquist?
Yes.
Mr. Sperling?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Zimmer?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda is our first petition for this evening, which is 901-20. Is there someone here to speak to that petition?
Good evening, Plan Commission. Tony Hendricks, Charles Hendricks and Associates Engineering Surveying LaPorte, 512 Lincoln Way. We previously emailed the notification to adjacent owners, the map, and the legal advertisement. I represent Wally Pritz, LLC, proposes a 7-lot, single-family residential townhome development on Woodland Avenue, south of Wellnets Road, on the west side of Woodland Avenue. Be called Woodland Estates. These are single-family townhomes, 2 per unit per lot. They have, if I get my notes here, there would be approximately, there's going to be 14 townhomes, about 1,250 square foot each townhome. All the lots are over 11,000 square foot. The proposed cost per townhome finished is $180,000. Total construction cost of the subdivision is $2.5 million. That would equate to tax revenue per year of $25,000 per year once completed. Presently, the tax revenue is $186 per year on this parcel. That's 135 times the yearly revenue. The discussion at the preliminary hearing or the technical advisory meeting was the lot, this is zoned R3A. That is for higher density residential units, and those would be like 4 units per building. Those are a lot higher density. So these are only 2-family townhomes, 2 residential homes. The concerns at the technical advisory meeting were that this is Woodland Avenue, it is a heavily traveled road, and there was some request to look at some sort of access in the back. We looked at that. We did engineer and survey and look at that. If we had put a road in the back, A would be in the county. This parcel split between Michigan City and LaPorte County. It's a strange parcel. So this development is only on the city parcel. There is a parcel in back, which is in the county, which we would do our stormwater. But if we put the road in the back, you would have approximately 50 feet between the movement of people turning on the Wellnets Road and the people coming out of this. So if you would try to run all that traffic out to Wellnets Road, 50 feet away from a turn, from a radius, you would probably have a lot more safety issues than you have coming on Woodland. We do understand that Woodland is a heavily traveled road. It's approximately 30 feet of pavement. So we have some paved shoulders, and the developer is giving the city an extra, I asked him to give the city an extra 10 foot of right-of-way, so in the future when Woodland turns out to be probably like Ohio, there will be enough room to put the extra lane in there. We looked across the city and we reviewed multiple city projects in the past. There was some discussion about turnoffs for the garbage men on the site, and garbage men deliver garbage, pick up garbage everywhere in the city, whether it's on Highway 20, Ohio Street, or any other road. But we did look at past projects from the municipality. Knowing this is a private developer putting 7 lots on this Woodland Avenue, we looked at past developments in Michigan City. The most recent one is Ohio Street. Ohio Street has just been $11 million, and there were no turnoffs on Ohio Street. And those people back into Ohio Street. So those were some of the concerns. We looked at a past project, Wabash Street, Washington Street, 11th Street, Michigan Boulevard, which is 4 lanes, and Cool Spring. Cool Spring is kind of an adjacent road also. Cool Spring also had rehabilitation done to it, and there were no turnoffs placed. So Michigan City, we following suit that this development would look at some access to Woodland Avenue as the safest access, not being the best either way, but the safer access on Woodland. The land to the north of Wellnets is already developed into lots. It's already ready. This commission wouldn't have to do any approval. Those lots are ready. They're zoned R3A. They could do exactly what we're asking to do here on those parcels that were subdivided in the past. We looked at the stormwater control structures. Michigan City installed stormwater control at Wellnets in Woodland at the southeast corner not too many years ago, I believe about 6 years ago, to alleviate the water that was going down the south side of Wellnets. Our overflow would be into that structure. We did have the meeting that these are sanitary sewer, City, Michigan City. They have enough capacity. The water department has enough capacity for water lines here. We would have NIPSCO Gas, NIPSCO Electric, AT&T Telephone, Comcast Cable. So all the utilities are present and along Woodland Road in the Michigan City proper. The parcel in the back, as I stated before, is in the city of LaPorte, or is in the county of LaPorte, and the ability to annex into the city is something that would be done in the future because these owners would probably want 2 tax bills, one from the city and one from the county. We'll leave that open for any questions for the Plan Commission or the developer. All right.
Is there any chance that driveways could be combined to, like in pairs perhaps, to eliminate some of the curb cuts?
With the townhomes, we're getting partially that because the townhomes will have driveways, one, just like the developer, Mr. Priss, just in Ohio. Both homes will have one driveway coming out to Woodland. To kind of pair them and have 4 driveways coming out with the uses and the snow we get, it probably would create more of a hassle than it would a safety measure. These are the typical people in Ohio are the people that are coming in their homes and reducing their home size. So these aren't your typical families with vehicles coming in and out multiple times. These are people that pretty much have houses in Florida. They come back and their daily trips are smaller than we'd see in a normal residential. But we did look at that, yes.
But you do anticipate driveways for off-street parking. Are you planning garages or something like that for the traffic, or are you anticipating that they're going to park along Woodland?
There is no parking along Woodland. No. These will all be 2-car garage per unit. And the families or the individuals that buy these typically have 1 car, some of them have 2, and they park their cars in the garage. It's just like suburban estates, Riviera Drive. You go through there and they're all parking in the garage. They don't like to have their cars parked in their driveways or multiple cars sitting on their driveways.
Question. So I'm just trying to picture right after Wellness Road. Are you saying these driveways will lead out into Woodland, or will there be an entrance to get into? Because I didn't.
We looked at the ability to have an entrance to get on this property off of Wellnets, and by the time you do that, the people turning off of Woodland northbound to Wellnets eastbound would run within 50 feet of where they access, and that would create a far more dangerous safety condition than having them come out. Now the intent is to get these people to pull onto Woodland, not like Ohio, to pull on Woodland in a forward motion and not a reverse motion. These driveways are not typical 20-foot. We have 2-car garages. So these driveways that are concrete, just like in suburban states Riviera, are 40-foot wide. Typically when we design a driveway that someone would have to back up into and turn around, we give them a 30-foot turning movement radius. So these concrete driveways are 40-foot wide.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm trying to picture it in my head how this looks. I'm going down Woodland, and to be able to access into, off of Woodland into these. Would there be multiple driveways, or is there?
There'll be 7 driveways off of Woodland, just like if you went through suburban estates.
Okay. I'll see this. No, I did not get a chance.
Yeah, we can.
And again, the expectation is that the cars would turn around somehow in the driveway on the property and pull forward, exiting the property.
The safest movement would be for them to forward out onto Woodland.
So the back end to get into the property.
Why are the units so close to the road? Isn't there any way to push them back a little bit?
Maybe Skylar will give you the most updated version. Yes, we push them back for 2 reasons: to give the city a little more future right away, and we allow a little more yard. We know once in a while somebody will visit one of these units and they'll park there, so you have enough room to park your car in front of the garage door. And the the lots need to be, I guess, right, Scott, the lots need to be a minimum 10,000 square foot in an R3A. These are all over 11,000 square foot. The motion, if it was tonight to approve this, would be that we would ask relief from the frontage. An R3A frontage requires more than 90 feet. I believe it requires 100. So we're asking for the R2A frontage of 90 foot.
Can I chime in? So you'll see this in my report, but actually so in the ordinance under section 05.03, 05.04, there's actually a subsection H, and it says single-family detached and two-family lots. Basically, they're referred to the R1D, so you don't have to abide by the 100, 10,000. And then also it says section T, single-family and two-family dwellings shall meet the dimensional requirements of R1D, which gets you out of asking for the, basically. And so what that lot size is, it's 50-foot frontage and a 5,000 square foot lot size. So he's exceeding that with what's being proposed. And then the side yard is 5, front yard's 20, backyard's 20. The side street yard is 20. That just kind of gives you a breakdown, so you don't need the variance, if you want to call it that.
So all the lots are 90-foot frontage minimum and over 10,000 square foot.
Another quick question. In going down Woodland, I mean, I travel that road every day. You said, did I hear something in regards to a turn lane at some point, possibly? Or, I mean, I know Woodland's not, it's 2 lanes right now.
I mean, I don't know. We don't have plans for a turn lane. Woodland's becoming a more, it's a fairly busy street. It's becoming more busy. It could potentially grow to carry more traffic. Does it have the space to carry more traffic? Probably. But we do not have plans for turn lane, or we do not have plans to restripe or right now, at least. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff.
Yeah, we are just allowing the right-of-way. So the city, if they would ever advance that, they will own the right-of-way fee simple.
Gotcha.
They would essentially dedicate that extra lot, that extra right-of-way or land to the city to be used as right-of-way at a time when it demanded to upsize the road.
I don't know of any plans to widen the road right away. Not a right away anyway.
If approved, this development would dedicate 15-foot extra feet to the city.
This lot, the whole thing drains south to north. Is that right? You're going to run all the water south to north?
Yes. It's kind of the high point.
Do you say there's an inlet there? Is this an inlet?
There's an inlet right there at the southeast corner of Wellness and Woodland. There's also an inlet that the city just installed at further east on Woodland with a beehive basin out there in the ditch to collect all that water on that south side of Wellness that's running to the west.
Is that where you're taking the water, that inlet right there?
That's where any water after the 100-year flow would flow.
That's the overflow.
That's the overflow. We would hold all water with 100-year plus a little more.
Skylar, are we asking for sidewalks along here?
I mean, it's required unless I think you guys have the power to waive it, but it is required of subdivisions unless it's requested.
Are they shown on here?
They are not.
Yeah, the sidewalk would be inside, they would be on the city right away, so this like every other in town.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did not depict those, but yes, we would have sidewalks. We would have the tree plantings required by the city, and the lighting, which is not required, would be on the houses as standard lights on their house, so you get 2 lights per every garage.
Yeah.
So you kind of getting the extra lights out there.
Yeah, they're not required to put in street lights or anything like that. I think what he's getting at is that it would have some residual light.
Yes.
Where would the sidewalks lead to and from? Just simply in front of these 7 lots and a kind of dead end on Wellnut and dead end on the south end there, so there's nobody's going to walk on them?
That's where we would be required to.
Unfortunately, you have to request it. The reason that we want to see sidewalks put in, especially in the urban setting, is yeah, they may go nowhere now, but in 20 years, 10 years, when the street grows, they may repurpose it and put sidewalks on, and then they would be able to connect it and make their sidewalks. The city would be able to go further with sidewalks, essentially. It's just good planning.
Roads generally flat, woodland.
Yes, there's sight distance minimum quarter mile each way. It's flat as can be
At each driveway.
at each driveway.
And then the one nearest Wellnut's Road, obstructions of any kind.
There's nothing there. There's some telephone boxes and we have a cable box there, but there's no poles there or anything at that location. The city came in there and redeveloped that corner to make sure the stormwater did not pond there and took care of, you see some structures, and they even bought a piece from this ground right there in the corner.
If there were access to the rear of the properties there on the east end abutting the county property, you mentioned that part of that access road would be on city property and part on the county property?
The question at the technical advisory was, could you put access in back of here and run everyone to the house in the back? And if we did that, it would be on the county property, which would be the east end of this property. So it'd be all on county property. But when it came out to Wellnets, which would still be LaPorte County, it would only be approximately 50 feet from where the radius ends that those people are making their movements off of Woodland turning on to Wellnets. So somebody's turning right.
It's a rear end problem.
Yeah, they're really not looking for somebody coming at them across right at the intersection. So it's a question of which side of the access is the safest. We're not, we can't give you the complete safe access, but which side is the safest access? Wellnets, that intersection has enough traffic, people stopping and coming through, that we feel you would cause more safety issues putting people there than you would having them come out in forward motion onto Woodland.
I guess I don't disagree. If you're making the turn on there, the guy following is expecting the vehicle to move on. But if the vehicle doesn't move on and slows down, that's a potential for a rear end.
Yeah, they won't be watching for the guy in front of him stopping because somebody's coming out on the Wellnets from the back of this property. And they will, you see it when you do go on 994 or major interstates, somebody's not watching that person when they're yielding to get on. They're not expecting them to stop right in front of them. So that was our concern too. We did review how we potentially could get some other access through here. Our decision was that we have enough ability to give the city enough ground that when Wellnets generates that much traffic, it could either be a double lane north and south, or it could be a lane with a turn lane, which gives the ability to these people to come out.
There's a boundary line identifying the city limits that runs through the property, so each parcel is on city and county.
This subdivision only deals with the city because we couldn't figure out a way to go to the city and then go to the county plan commission and ask for the same thing. So this subdivision, which the lots are more than 10,000 square foot, in the future, if they annex to the city, they would automatically get that because they are owners of those two parcels. It's a strange animal.
When we first started this, we talked about running them basically at the same time. It's just a lot of brain damage to do that, to keep up with it. So I think at this point in time, there's asking for the city lots and then going back to the planning commission at the county level, or not, to subdivide again, basically.
Yeah, we would have to go. The county, LaPorte County, and this is one of the strange things since I'm one of the authors of the JZO that you're looking at, LaPorte County struck out the part of their ordinance that did not let people split ground. In LaPorte County, you can cut any piece of ground you want out of any piece of ground you own. It doesn't make it buildable, though. So this subdivision, the people would own this lot and another piece behind them, and the tax person would give you 2 tax IDs and send you 2 tax bills. Now, going forward, we didn't run congruently the annexation and the subdivision approval through this plan commission and through the city council at the same time, but we would expect to run, as soon as we're approved, to run through the annexation through this plan commission and back to the city council, and then amend the plat in an administrative plat to give these people the extra piece of ground, because it just makes their lots bigger.
Okay, any other questions or comments from board members? If not, then we're ready for Skylar's report.
Okay. This is the Michigan City Plan Commission. This is actually not, got the date wrong on there. It's actually February 25th, 2020. This is case 901-20, Woodland Ave Estates. The request. The petitioner is requesting approval of a major subdivision to create 7 new residential lots located at the northeast corner of Wellnutz Road and Woodland Ave. Staff analysis. The property in question is currently vacant and unsubdivided. The property is zoned R3A and surrounding properties are zoned R3A to the north and east and B2 to the south and west. The joint ordinance 05.03 and 05.04 building dimensional requirements and lot area and width requirements applicable to R3A 05.03H single-family detached and two-family lots. Lots created for the purpose of single-family detached or two-family dwellings shall be required to meet the lot area and width requirements of the R1D single-family residential districts. And then 05.04T single-family detached and two-family lots. Single-family detached and two-family dwellings shall be required to meet the dimensional requirements of the R1D single-family residential district. R1D lot size and building dimensional standards. The frontage is 50 feet. The lot size is 5,000 feet, square feet rather than the 10,000 square feet. So 100 was required by the R3A of frontage. The side yard is 5. The front yard is 20. The backyard is 20. The side street yard is 20. So that means lot 7 will need to maintain a side street yard of 20 feet. Which I do believe is shown on the drawing. Additional information. The location on Woodland is fairly busy and due to proximity to businesses and intersection of Woodland and US 20. At development review, there were major concerns with the number of residential curb cuts along Woodland. The fire department has provided feedback on their concerns about the access. Planning staff would prefer to see access granted in the form of a rear access drive with an entrance along Wellnutz rather than 7 new residential curb cuts. And then, just given the information that you've been provided tonight, I would just say that there's still going to be some traffic issues with regard to these residential curb cuts. There's going to be stacking, stopping right past a stoplight, etc. You're still going to experience that. There's a lot of traffic that comes to that stoplight. Furthermore, the plat that the planning staff currently has does not have the correct certificates required for primary plat approval. We would like to see these certificates prior to approval of the primary plat. So staff recommendation tonight, and this is just based upon the certificates, I'm not basing it upon any of the additional information. I would like to see us continue this petition until I have the primary plat with the correct certificates on it for review. And then I'll also read departmental comments as well.
Sure.
Departmental comments. This one's from Mr. Jeff Bruder. Just left the plan review meeting and we had some discussion about the property. The fire department's main concern right now is the driveway layout and how it will affect traffic flow, specifically safety for the residents backing out onto Woodland Ave. We tried to express our concerns for refuse removal and business traffic across the street. Hopefully we can come to an agreement. The sanitation department. The Michigan City Sanitation District takes no exception to the proposed residential subdivision, subject to compliance with IDM Rule 5 and City of Michigan City codes and ordinances regarding stormwater pollution prevention during and after the completion of construction. The district's assent is also subject to the installation of individual sanitary laterals and taps for each occupied residential unit. If, for example, the 7 lots is developed as a residential duplex, then 14 individual laterals and taps will be required. This is from the water department. The water department, water is available at the proposed site. For water service taps, developer can contact the water department when they're ready to pay for the taps. Randy Russell, superintendent. That's all I have.
Thanks, Skylar. I have one more question about the lot. I drove by there today and I noticed that they've already started cutting down some of the trees. Is there a plan to preserve some of the trees in the backs of the building sites, or are you going to just clear cut everything?
Typically, they cut all the trees they need to. If there's any trees that can save, they would like to save them. The density here is there are small lots. We're moving the buildings back further, so we will most likely lose 90% of the trees. They will be planting trees back, and there will be some growth in the future. So, yes, they started clearing, and
I would also say they haven't clear cut the lots.
No, we just.
I believe I visited it. It looks to me the code requires 8-inch breast height. It looks like you guys only took down larger or smaller trees, in my opinion.
In any event, you'd like the trees removed up near Woodland Road for visibility purposes too.
Yeah, you will get the bonus of safety by removing those trees at Wellnuts and Woodland.
I was referring more to the ones in the back.
But the ones in the back.
On that county property.
The ones in the back, I guess, are even worse because that's where we store our stormwater. So even though we'd like to save some of those, there is some stormwater back there.
We also do not have any say over, unless they annex into the city and subdivide again, it's the county property.
So by the time they will grub out the stormwater retention pond, it's not a clear cut. It obviously costs money to take the trees down, so if we don't have to take the trees down, the developer doesn't want to take the trees down.
Skylar, quick question. In regards to the tree and tree cuts, we're doing a survey, correct?
Typically, a tree survey would be submitted to us. We would deed that. And then anything inside the the building footprints you see, anything, I think 12 feet outside of that building footprint can be taken down. It also depends on rot, species. There's a few things involved in that, such as if it's invasive, obviously we want to take it out.
Right.
If it's rotted or dying, we don't want it to fall on a house or be dangerous at some point in the future. So those could be taken out. I would say it's not as clear cut as just there are some other factors, but typically we would have a tree survey and they would tell us which ones they're leaving based upon the position of the house on that lot. And the entrance, and the entrances.
So the ones that are more than 8 inches in diameter, those have to be replaced somewhere else?
They would be.
I'm trying to recall the ordinance, the way we passed it out here on Lakeshore Drive. And I said that would apply to the city. I think it says they have to be replaced. They can't be replaced on the property. They need to be replaced somewhere else within the city, if I'm not correct.
Correct, or they pay basically I think there's an assessed, I don't want to say a penalty, but because you can pay and take down trees. I don't know, it's an assessment based upon the number of trees and making sure they fit that diameter and of the species, like black oak versus something invasive. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Yeah, it did.
Okay.
Just wanted to make sure they, like you said, they have to be replaced somewhere else. If they can't be replaced on the property, then after the survey, they are replaced somewhere else within the city.
Yes.
We're concerned about the tree canopy in the city.
Yes.
But that would be an approval process outside of the plan commission. That would be before other agencies.
It's a technical question through the planner.
We could do it at time of it just depends. I mean, if they're planning on just going in there and clear cutting right now, then we would need it before we approve primary. If they're going to submit it at time of, if you condition this approval upon submission of a tree survey at time of permit,
we still have construction plans to submit and be approved to the planner and the engineer.
Yeah. So there's a few other things between primary and secondary approval. There's some construction documents that need to be drafted. If we want to have that done, tell us what you're keeping, what you're taking down between now and then. I leave that to the purview of this board.
And what is petitioner's request for this commission here, what would you like?
We're seeking primary plat approval so we can move forward to construction plans and the trees and the stormwater, either bond or build, before the developer can build houses or get to secondary plat mode. We have to come back through this board, if I'm correct, for secondary plat approval, which requires us to have the other steps in place before you move on to secondary plat approval. And I guess the question for Skylar is, because we had some emails today, the certificates that he's asking for to continue, we obviously don't want to continue it, but we reviewed the ordinance, and the certificates he's asking for look like they're for the secondary plat. We looked at Appendix 1, and it says secondary plat.
They're supposed to be provided at primary, time of primary. They do say secondary, but they actually are referenced in the list of things that needed to be on the primary.
Yes, it says certificates, and then we go to Appendix 1, it says secondary plat.
But it says they are required to be on the primary as well.
We can take care of that in the primary plat. If we get approval from this board tonight, we can move forward to construction plans, which requires the planner and the engineer to approve all these things before we can move forward to the secondary plat, which also comes before this board.
We received reports from the different departments, and I think one of the reports Skylar referenced talks about the vehicles backing out of the driveway, which is not the case of the plan. So have you received those reports and reviewed them, and do you have any comments or position on
That's why we went back and reviewed those with those concerns to make sure that they could come out on the Woodland in a forward motion, and we did look at a potential back access for everybody that would come on the wellnets, and our concerns with the safety outweighed Woodland and it outweighed wellnets, because we probably know that wellnets at that point is a county road. And the county, if I remember correctly, when the county was going to do something with wellnets because of the water, they looked at the $1 million cost, and they said that was 90% of their yearly budget, and they're not going to spend that money on wellnets when the other 1,200 miles in LaPorte County require attention. So Michigan City did its stormwater drainage, and which the county did get permission to put some stormwater in there, that we felt the safer route was knowing Woodland at some point would become more accessible and useful in the safety manner, that these people would then have better access on Woodland than forcing the wellnets for eternity into a county road.
Do you have any other comments or observations about the department reports?
No, we reviewed all those. We have sanitary sewer, we have water lines. We understand the concern about trash pickup. Again, like I said, all over Michigan City. I don't know, other than the one section of Cool Spring, I don't think there's any section of road in Michigan City that allows for turnoffs for trash pickup. There are roads that we review traffic counts. You can go to NDOT website, you can review traffic counts for all the roads in Michigan City. This is a higher traffic count area. I haven't looked at it enough. I've been researching, trying to pull those numbers out, because it looks like there's something going on here. In my mind, I can't say, but it looks like there might be an anomaly, because south of 20 on Woodland is like 4,500 cars per day. North of Cool Spring is like 4,500 cars a day. Cool Spring is like 8,000 cars a day. NDOT typically says, I believe they say, after 14,000 cars per day on this kind of two-lane road, you need to have some concerns. The traffic counts in this area seem to be extraordinarily high for what happened. I reviewed as much as I could to see when they give you hour by hour the traffic counts. But if you look at traffic counts, and I'm not an engineer, but I've looked at enough traffic counts to know, you usually see where the traffic goes. You know, they take it one day of the year, 24 hours a day. So you can usually see where the traffic went if it came through a normally high traffic count. We can't find out where that traffic is coming or going from. It's not showing up on any other ancillary counts. I don't know, was there an accident on 20 that people were bypassing it that day? Was there something going on Cool Spring that they were bypassing a side road? So we did look at that, and the normal counts north and south of this are about 4,500 cars per day. The counts on Cool Spring, I believe, are about 8,000. Johnson Road, typically about 9,000 cars per day. US 35s, typically about 10,000 cars a day. So those are two-lane highways, major along this road, that the counts are demonstrably lower. So we thought wellnets, the access to wellnets was probably not the safest solution. We can't give you the perfect solution, but we can give you the safer solution.
What would it take for you to get the certificates?
a day to just put them on the plat and email them over.
So we're looking at a tree survey and certificates. Is that basically what this is coming down to?
If the Plan Commission would like to make a motion to approve this pending the certificates and the tree survey, we would continue on to the next phase of construction, certificates, tree survey, and either bonding or building the subdivision before we come back to you. So you still have another stay.
Will the plans also show how many and new trees are going to go in and where?
Well, we will show you about where we expect the tree, and we'll show you the detail, the deciduous tree that's required by ordinance on the detail. Yes. And the decks that might be, and what trees are left, and how much space we have left between the county land and the pond, and where we're going to put the trees in front, and what trees are left in the back. Anyone from the public here?
Skylar, do you have any more comments about this?
I'll just mention the reason for I asked for continuance is I don't want to make a recommendation to the Plan Commission for something that's not complete. I just want to be clear about that. That's my reason. I don't want to set precedents of previous that's not complete. But if we're going to hold, put a condition on it or something like that, that would be fine. We do have another step, if you will, and we do have other reviews. So there's still some mechanisms there for stopgap mechanisms. So I'll just that's my only comment.
I make a motion to approve, subject to complying with the certificates, if you're prepared to accept motions.
Could you state that again?
I make a motion to approve, subject to providing the certificates.
And the tree survey. That comes along for the ride? Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve, subject to the certificates. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Yes, of course. Please come up. Please state your name and address.
My name is Paul Applegate. I'm a CPA, and I own Applegate and Company CPAs right across the street from the property that's going to be developed. And actually, I'm in favor of the project. I think it's going to be a good project for the area. I'm very concerned, though, with those cuts onto Woodland Ave. Our office has been there for 30 years, and I can tell you that the traffic has gotten progressively worse. FedEx now has a depot where these FedEx trucks are coming down there. And when we originally got the zoning for our office building, we gave the city 30 feet of depth to our lot for the entire width, and we gave them 30 feet of depth so that if they did widen Woodland or put in a turn lane or whatever, they would not have to purchase the land from us. We deeded it to them. I can just tell you that we've seen accidents, numerous accidents on that road, and cars go very fast. I mean, a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit on that road's a joke. It's more like 40, 45 miles an hour. And I would just be very concerned with that many cuts onto Woodland Ave, the risk of accidents. And if a lot of the people there are going to be senior citizens that maybe come back during the summer and are spending the winters in Florida, I would question too, if their driving ability decreases with age, is that going to make a bad situation even worse? So I would really encourage the Plan Commission to work with the developer to see if there's any alternative to these cuts onto Woodland. In fact, when we build our office building, as you know, there's on the west side of Woodland, there's probably 4 or 5 office buildings. when we originally got the approval for that development, they actually were talking about us only having one cut onto Woodland, and we would have to have an inside road to connect all the offices. And then they finally allowed us to have cuts for each office building. But I mean, I've been there 30 years, and this was a concern 30 years ago, and I can tell you it's a lot worse now than it was 30 years ago. So.
Do you feel that maybe the traffic is just higher along there right now because of the construction on 20?
No, it's always been high, and I'll tell you what happens. People come down Cool Spring, and you know, to answer your question why it's not as busy south on Woodland Ave, south of 20 or north of Cool Spring, I think what happens, people come down Cool Spring and they cut right down there to get over to 20 is what happens. We live in Long Beach, and when I come in from Long Beach, I go down Carwick to Springland to Risky to Cool Spring to Woodland, and if I'm going to Walmart or if I'm going to Meijer, I do the same route. And it's just, you know, it's a very major busy street, and I would encourage the city at some point to widen that to 4 lanes or at least a turn lane, because there's just so much traffic there every day. In fact, some of our staff people will actually work a little later in the day so they don't have to deal with the traffic at 5 o'clock on Woodland, because it backs up. We've had traffic back up all the way from Woodland, or excuse me, all the way from Highway 20 to our office where it's been backed up. So I think I would encourage you to look at some alternatives, because I think the traffic's a lot worse than you might realize. So.
Thank you, Mr. Applegate. Yes, please, come up. State your name and address, please.
Mr. Applegate made it.
State your name and address, please.
My name is Wallace Pritz, 9149 West Summit Court, Michigan City. And Mr. Applegate made a comment respecting to the drives. I would like to see the city look into the possibility of limiting several of their curb cuts from the businesses and make them have a reciprocity agreement so that the traffic can move through the parking lots to a specific points that the cars could access from the business onto Woodland Avenue. They could do that and line them up with Wellness Road, which make it easy, go through the parking lot and go east across Woodland, right down Wellness Road, and they can disperse either way they want to go. And there's possibilities of looking at how they can do some of the other, I understand some of that property in the back can be connected to the residential part there. I don't know the name of where Dr. Cora lives. They can have an entrance back there that they can exit out onto, Barker Ave, Barker Road. And I think that would eliminate a lot of the problem with the traffic. And I think it should be looked at very hard by the city of limiting because they got 6 entrances coming out, and we're only going to have 7 with a very minimal amount of traffic coming in and out of those residential areas. But you got how many? Maybe 100 people, 500 people coming out of the businesses. They should be looking at that to terminate. The state on our shopping center on 20 has cut down several of the entrances or exits off of 20 onto the property that we have. And they brought it down to 3. No, I'm sorry, 4. And I don't see why the city shouldn't be looking into something like that rather than trying to expect the 7 little projects to satisfy and curb all the problems that was developed by people prior to this time. Thank you.
Yes.
Just like to respond to Mr. Pritz's comments. The amount of traffic that comes in and out of our office is not significant. We have 12 accountants working for us, and we have clients that come in periodically, but we're not a retail business by any means. Probably the greater traffic is to the south of us at that dental clinic, but the offices where we're at and the ones next door don't generate a lot of vehicular traffic. Pretty much we come there in the morning, park, work, and leave at night. So there's not a lot of traffic we're putting out onto Woodland Ave.
Okay.
So
Thank you. Yeah, so, yeah, we have, I guess we hadn't had all the public comments and everything before we had the motion, but, so right now we have a motion and a second. I don't know if we want to stick with that, or does anybody want to have any more comments on the board before we move with the motion? Okay. So, I guess we have a motion and we have a second, so I guess we just take the roll.
Yeah.
So Skylar, you would like to see it continued so that you have all of your certificates in place before we approve this.
Well, that's what I had recommended, but it's not the motion on the floor right now, just being clear. But if the board sees fit or decides to grant it with conditions that we do that, along with the construction documents and tree survey, that I would be okay with that as well. That gives us time to review those certificates, make sure that everything's in order for them before we approve. So there's some time between now and secondary. It's at your pleasure. So I would like to see it continue to review those, but
So all the requirements, as I understand, all of the the plat requirements are here except for the certificates.
correct.
And during the engineering phase, we get another stab at this thing. Is that right?
We review the construction documents, and if there's any dedications or easements that need to be granted, we would make sure those are in place. And then once those are in place, I'm assuming Mr. Hendricks would come back and request secondary plat approval, final plat approval, whichever one you want to call it. And at that point, we would sign the actual plat.
So I guess what I'm trying to get at is I don't know what's our place right here to try to resolve engineering questions as long as the plat satisfies the ordinance. That's where we're at.
Yeah. Technically, we would have the certificates on a primary plat. So I'm not going to make a recommendation to you when it doesn't have all those things on it. I can't say, yeah, it's complete. I don't want to do that to you guys. So technically, that's all that's missing. Yes.
I still like your motion.
Yeah. But we have granted some conditions in the past. Attorney Hales mentioned that. And this would avoid a delay of another month coming back and processing everything.
Okay, so we have our motion and our second. Skylar, let's take the roll.
Mr. Dabney?
Nay.
Mr. Gallus?
Yes.
Mr. Granquist?
Yes.
Mr. Sperling?
No.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Zimmer?
No.
Okay. So it's, I think, motion denied at this point. Yes. Yes. Or we're tied.
Gotcha. All right, I'll make a motion to continue until Skylar receives all proper documentation.
I second it.
Mr. Dabney?
Aye.
Mr. Gallus?
Yes.
Mr. Granquist?
Yes.
Mr. Sperling?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Zimmer?
Yes.
Okay, motion approved.
Our next petition this evening is 902-20. Is there somebody here to speak for that petition? Yes. Mr. Thate.
My name is Stephen Thate from Thate GLE Surveying, 3301 Franklin Street, Michigan City.
Speak to the mic. Thanks.
My name is Steve Thate from Thate GLE Surveying, Michigan City, 3301 Franklin Street. We're here. We had platted a subdivision in 2007 of 14 lots, which was approved and recorded. And at the time, there was 5-foot side building lines. And the person that bought lot 12 did some planning on a house, planning with the 5-foot side building lines, and found out that they're now 7. It was rezoned without him knowing it. And so now we want to move the 2 interior lot lines between 12 and 13 and 13 and 14. We want to move it 1 over 4 feet and 1 over 2 feet to allow him to build the house he had designed. We're not creating any new lots. We're just moving those 2 lot lines over. I did get a letter in the mail from one of the adjacent property owners that they are not for this new subdivision. The lot lines need to be kept the way they are currently. Now, this is already a subdivision. We've already have 3 lots. It's not creating anything more. So it's kind of a moot point, really, if it doesn't affect the neighbor at all. There's going to be 3 homes there regardless. So we have to go through this procedure, 3-part procedure, the development, the primary, and the secondary, to get this job done.
And the lot line you're moving is interior,
They're
the exterior boundaries, so
Yes.
it wouldn't affect any neighbors or adjacent community.
No. We're meeting the frontage, we're meeting the square footage requirements.
Okay, Skylar, you have a report on this?
I can maybe I can clarify some things with this. So let me go ahead and read this report in. So I'm sorry for the date. The date is actually February 25th. I apologize. This is case number 90220, JGM, a re-subdivision of three previously subdivided lots. I believe that was it Krieger subdivision or was it Harbor?
No, it was Kruger
subdivision.
subdivision.
So the request is for a development plan approval for a re-subdivision of 3 previously subdivided lots. Staff analysis. The property in question is currently vacant and subdivided. The surrounding uses are single-family residential and are zoned R1E to the north-south and I believe to the east as well, and then Marina District to the southwest. So that's the piece that the park owns. It's actually zoned Marina District. The joint zoning ordinance 04.04, building dimensional requirements under subsection I, standards applicable to the R1E district. 1. Subdivision of land. Any subdivision or re-subdivision of land shall require a concept plan, which Mr. State has already provided me, and I provided him a response back at a staff level. followed by a development plan, followed by a primary plat for review and approval by the Plan Commission at a public hearing in compliance with the requirements of the 1400 series of Indiana Code 3674 prior to submission of an application for primary plat review. Tonight, the petitioner is before the Plan Commission to ask for the development plan approval to move to the next step, which is a primary and secondary approvals. So now I'll kind of clarify why we're here. This re-subdivision cannot be approved under the administrative subdivision ordinance and therefore must be done by re-subdivision. Essentially, what the petitioner is trying to accomplish is to give more land to Lot 12 by adjusting the interior lots of Lots 13 and 14. So by sliding over one Lot 13 2 feet and then sliding over Lot 14 or Lot, correct me if I'm wrong, 14 2 feet, 13 4 feet, he can accomplish giving more land to Lot 12. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Normally, through an administrative subdivision, we can get rid of lot lines and we can create less lots. Well, this isn't creating less lots, and it's not a Scrivener's error. So it's not an error that was caught later on. This is essentially re-subdividing a piece of land and moving lot lines. That's why we can't do it administratively. We have to re-subdivide it. So just being clear about that. Staff recommendation. Staff has reviewed the proposed development plan and offers the following. Staff finds the criteria required for submittal and approval of development plan has been satisfied and recommends approval of the development plan. Should I read you this reports from the various departments as well?
Sure.
Okay. I only have one, and it's from the Water Department. The Water Department, Department of Waterworks has no objections to replatting, reconfiguring the lots of 12, 13, 14 in the Harbor Park re-subdivision. I would also like to read as part of this into record, just because it was received, the remonstrance that we did receive. It's from Alan Gojny, 305 Viola Lane, Prospect Heights, Illinois, 60070. It's basically the public hearing notice, and then at the bottom it says we are not for this new subdivision. The lot lines need to be kept the way they are currently. Thank you. And then it's signed by them, and then it's got their 109 Washington Park Boulevard, Michigan City, 46360. That must be their house here in Michigan City.
Thanks, Skylar. Any comments from the board members?
Yep, it's a quick question, just to put it in plain English. What this is doing basically is just extending the amount of area that the house can be built after it's all said and done, correct?
Correct. This gives the lot in question, well, this gives lot 12 it gives it approximately another 4 to 5 feet
4 foot of frontage
of side yard, available side yard and frontage, so thereby taking that pie wedge and and making it wider, if you will, which would allow the house to sit there without needing any variances or anything of that nature.
And, like I said, just in plain English, the people that I talk to in that area, they just have concerns about this starting to look like Beach Walk. How Beach Walk is jammed in there. I just want to make sure, and they would like to hear that that's not what would happen, with this move moving forward.
I'll try to address that one. So Beach Walk is a PUD that has its own code, development code. It also has its own zoning code and its own setbacks. And if you notice in there, they have very tight side yard. What we would be approving tonight, if this is approved, this does not give any rights to lot 13 and 14 that are not, we would have to hold 13 and 14 to the same standards as 12, meaning that keeping that 5 foot setback, a 5 foot setback and a 5 foot setback allows 10 feet between houses. That is fire code.
Okay.
Does that answer the question? I know maybe sometimes the Beach Walk is perceived to be a lot less than that, but this would be...
This is 7 now.
Yes, it's 7. So this does not... It doesn't give them a variance for the other lots. It maintains foot between houses for fire code.
Perfect. Thank you.
Is there any comment from the public?
Yes, please.
State your name and address.
Yes, my name is James Morse. I do own a home in Michigan City, 205 California Avenue, but we also are the owners of Lot 11, which is immediately adjacent to this lot.
Could you speak into the mic a
Yes,
little
sorry.
more?
We are immediately, I own the lot immediately adjacent to this, Lot 11, which is next to 12, which is the requested change. This is, we do appreciate the fact that we received a registered letter advising us of this meeting. However, this is the first we've heard of what the proposed change is, and we would like the opportunity to study it. The reason for that is we also own Lot 4. There was a variance granted there for Lot 3, which we were never provided notice of, and it disadvantaged our property. It made it less valuable. And so I'd like to be able to study this before saying we do not have an issue. It could be changing the size of available homes. This could oversize that house as compared to what's available on lots 11, 13, and 14. And we haven't had a chance to study this at all. So we're not saying we oppose, but we would like the opportunity to study this more thoroughly and request that this be continued until the next meeting.
Any other public comment? Skylar, do you have any response to this?
I would just add, this is not a primary plat approval, so there's still another. If the Plan Commission decides to approve, there's still another month where they come back to us for primary plat approval. At that time, at time of primary, that's when we get another, and we have another public comment at that time. I'll just add that this is simply development plan review. So this is you guys saying we're okay with, in general, what's being proposed.
So this gentleman would have the opportunity to come into your office and you could explain to him what is being proposed.
That, or he could work with Mr. Thate and ask questions. I'm not encouraging one way or the other. I just want to be clear on the steps we have to take.
And my only comment in response to that is that sets the precedent. This is already on the track then for approval. We would like the opportunity to review. We don't think a 1 month delay. It's not going to be construction season now. Just give us the opportunity to look at this in detail, since we never had that opportunity with Lot 3, which was changed to our disadvantage. We want to make sure we understand this, have a chance to look at it with our own engineer, and see what it's going to do to house sizes on that hill. And we request a continuance rather than an approval today.
Because it's a three-step process, what would that do to your building? Would that push you back then?
It would, with all the plans.
Yeah. Okay.
That would give Mr. Morris a whole month to review this. Like I say, this is the development plan. We have primary and secondary to go through yet. And he's had, I don't know when we sent these out, but he's had some time already to review this. So it should be adequate time to look at this. Like I say, we had 5-foot building lines before that we could get even closer to him. Now we have 7-foot building lines, so we're further away from his lot even. So it's more in favor of him.
It's not really on the plat per se, but we drove by there, took a look. My thoughts go to the actual constructability on the lot in regards to driveway approaches and things on the hill. So I don't know that we addressed that here. We addressed that during the engineering on the construction plans or whatever at that point. But
We have, the lots will be accessed.
From the rear.
There's an alley on the north side, an existing alley from that Washington Park addition. And we have an easement that comes off of that services those 3 lots.
I see.
And I believe there's already asphalt in there on that easement, that they can come in there and come into the back of their lots.
Right. It's
So
rear
they're not
access.
gonna go
So
up
we
the
drove
hill
up
or
in-
anything.
I think we drove up in there today, didn't we? Yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's how they're accessed. They
So
won't
not
have
on the hill there.
Yeah, they
It's
won't
on
have
the
a-
other side.
driveway going up in the
All right, I understand. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And that shows on the plat.
I understand. Thank you.
Any other comments from board members? Any other public comment? Hearing none, do I get a motion to approve or disapprove of this petition?
I move to approve. I second it.
We have a motion and a second. Skylar?
Sure. Let's see. Sorry. Mr. Dabney?
Nay.
Mr. Gallus?
Yes.
Mr. Granquist?
Yes.
Mr. Sperling?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Zimmer?
Yes.
Motion approved. So to be clear, just for the public's knowledge, because you're here, he will have to come back for primary plat at the next, if he serves notice, it's up to him, or up to the petitioner, they'll have to come back to this board at the next, either next month or whenever you'll get another notice, is what I'm getting at.
That was my point.
You will get another notice, and then they'll have to reappear before the board and ask for primary plat approval. It's the purpose of that section of
I appreciate it.
code.
Our last petition this evening is 900-20, the Beach Walk Property Owners Association. Is there somebody here to speak to that petition?
Good evening. My name is Anthony Novak. I'm an attorney in LaPorte at Newby, Lewis, Kaminsky, and Jones. I'm here tonight on behalf of Beach Walk Property Owners Association. Here with me is Rachel McCormick. She is a member of the board. I might look a little different than the last meeting because that was Jim Kaminsky that was here on behalf of our firm. I had a conflict. I was at the Plan Commission in LaPorte. Back on January 28th, we had the development plan for this minor subdivision, which was ultimately approved. And just a short recap, we're talking about a 7-acre parcel right off of Washington Park Boulevard, which is basically the rear access to Beach Walk. It's currently undeveloped except for a small portion on the northern part of it. There is a gravel parking lot which is used for overflow parking. So basically why we're here, how this opportunity became presented to Beach Walk Property Owners Association, was that they negotiated a purchase of this land. They're going to divide it in two, hence the minor subdivision. The southern portion, being about 4 acres, is going to go to a nonprofit entity for preservation. The northern 2.83 acres is going to be held by the BPOA for possible future development. No concrete plans right now, but certainly there is an issue with needing parking, so that's why they certainly have it. So at the last meeting, there was just a question, I think, from maybe the fire department on whether or not there was an easement, a permanent easement for rear access. There is. We supplied that to Skylar. So ultimately tonight, I'll make it short and simple. The primary plat was submitted with our original application, and tonight I gave Skylar the final plat to have, so we're simply just asking for both primary and secondary approval of the plat. So I'm certainly available for any questions, as is Rachel.
Thank you, Mr. Novak. Any other questions from the board members?
There's been no change to the plat, the drawings, its dimensions, locations of easements, nothing's changed.
Nothing's
since the last
changed
time.
substantively, just the word primary to final.
Skylar, you have a report?
I will, and I'll expand upon the easement as well, since Mr. Granquist brought it up. This is case number 900-20, Beach Walk Minor Subdivision Development. Well, actually, this is for primary and secondary approval. The request, development plan approval for 2 parcel minor subdivision of 6.91 acres zoned R1E Waterfront Residence District. Staff analysis, the property in question is currently vacant and unsubdivided. The surrounding uses are single-family residential and are zoned R1E to the north, south, and west, and M2 industrial to the east of the site. You may recall that the joint zoning ordinance 04.04 building dimensional requirements, subsection I, standards applicable to the R1E district. Number 1, subdivision of land. Any subdivision or re-subdivision of land shall require a concept plan, followed by a development plan, followed by a primary plat for review and approval by the Planning Commission at a public hearing in compliance with the requirements of the 1400 series of Indiana Code 3674 prior to submission of an application for primary plat review. On January 28, 2020, the Planning Commission approved the development plan. Tonight, the petitioner is requesting primary subdivision and secondary approval, as he just mentioned, which is the next steps in the process. As part of the development plan review on the 28th, the staff made the following condition of approval. There is a permanent easement for safety access into the beach walk through the preserved property. This easement will need to be maintained and maintenance per the easement. The BPOA and attorney provided the staff with a copy of the easement language, and it was reviewed and determined that both new parcels are still entitled to the easement, and the easement should remain. Staff recommendation. Staff recommends approval of the primary plat as submitted by the petitioners. From correspondence, staff is under the impression that the petitioner is requesting secondary plat approval as well. We support secondary approval as well.
Thank you, Skylar. Any questions or comments from the board members? Yes.
Just really quickly, just to answer Mr. Granquist, we did receive a copy of the recorded agreement from the BPOA, from Mr. Novak and the BPOA, and we did review the easement language, and Mr. Hale reviewed that as well. Found it to be it preserves the right on both the new parcel and the existing parcels, so that we felt like the language was good on it.
Wondering about the maintenance. You're talking about the maintenance of the asphalt through there? Is that part of the agreement? Who maintains that? And what maintenance is required at what times? Those kind of items.
It is maintained. It is a private road or private easement, and it is to be maintained by the BPOA. There's a representative tonight. She might be able to address that. It wasn't as prescriptive as that it needs to be remaining there. It needs to be there. This road used to be a gravel road, and from time to time the fire department would go and review the road for access to make sure it wasn't pothole enough. They potholed out or wallered out, and then they would have to regrade it. They have since paved it, and I do believe they intend on keeping it paved and maintaining it in a manner that if it ever did fall in a state of disrepair, it would be up to them to replace it.
Yeah, the BPOA.
State your name.
Oh, sorry, Rachel McCormick, 103 Joe Lane, Michigan City. The BPOA did pay for, I think it's about 2.5 years ago, for the road to be paved, and we will continue to pay for the upkeep of the road. That is part of what we will do. It's our road going into our development.
Is that all written? Is that written out? Taken care of? Yeah. Addressed? 10 years from now, the road falls apart and they drive it.
It's actually in the easement itself. It specifically talks about when the property was purchased out of bankruptcy that there is going to be a maintenance agreement, and ultimately the grantee in that document, being the BPOA, has a responsibility to maintain it. And it further talks about if it's ever going to be moved, there would be cooperation talking to with the city so that the access could be provided. But yes, it's actually specified in the document that the BPOA would maintain it. That's correct.
I don't want to beat the horse here, but maintaining it could be putting down some seal coat while the road falls apart. I mean, what's the level of maintenance? What state is the road to be maintained at? Does that make sense?
No, I understand what you're addressing.
The level of traversability of the road? What level is that to be maintained at? Doesn't need to be an interstate. I mean,
No, I mean specifically,
ambulance or a fire truck or something. You know, I don't know.
the document itself indicates that the perpetual easement shall apply wherever the road is ultimately located, with cost of maintenance expense for the easement being shared pro rata among the grantee, the owner of the burdened property, and the owners of any property which may later benefit from the use of the easements and their successors in assign. So this document was ultimately part of a bankruptcy, and there was a sale order that was included with it. I don't have, going through it right now, the specific maintenance requirements that are ultimately needed, but I know that the overall purpose of the access road was to provide access to the rear of Beach Walk. So I don't know specifically if there are specific requirements, but as of the last couple of years, it's gone from gravel to asphalt. So I think that's the overall intent of what the BPOA will do with it.
I'm not trying to be difficult, okay, but we score all of our roads, right?
But this is a private road, so this is
But the agreement is to maintain it.
And not only maintenance is
And all I'm getting
reasonable for the
at, all
purpose
I'm
of
getting
the
at,
easement itself.
when we score those roads, they fall into a certain level of repair state. And all I was wondering is, who sets that level of repair state for that section?
I'm not sure, but I do know it's a private road, so I don't think there's a repair state that ultimately needs to be maintained.
Yeah,
So it doesn't have to be maintained.
No, it does have to be maintained, but there's no specific standards that might be applicable to the city that's applicable to this private road.
So it could be any state of maintenance.
I think the overall intent, though, is to maintain it for its overall purpose, which is rear access to Beach Walk.
Yeah.
I guess there's discretion there, but I think the overall intent is that.
For Beach Walk residents and emergency use.
Yeah.
Correct.
Correct. I might also say the way that we handled it before, when it got too bumpy, if you want to say, was we would have to essentially cite the BPOA, if you will, in some manner, for upkeep of the road, because it becomes it's their private drive. It's like a driveway. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Sorry if I can just talk again. It's a private access road which was put in essentially for the fire department and for emergency access. The BPOA, without owning the road and only having an easement to use the road, took it upon themselves to pave the road, which was a very large cost to our development, having just come through bankruptcy and not having a whole lot of money, to be quite honest. And we took it upon ourselves to get the money together to pave the road. So I don't think there's any question of the road not being maintained. It's going to be maintained the same way any of the other roads within Beach Walk are maintained to the same standard. And I don't believe there's any city, the city can determine how we upkeep the rest of our private roads. I've certainly, as a board member, never received any letters from the city telling us about the upkeep of any of the rest of the roads. So, it costs us an awful lot of money to put that road there. So it will be maintained in the same level that it's in right now. It doesn't behoove anybody in the association to have a road that's not usable or accessible. So.
If there's no more comments, we got a motion to approve or not approve this case?
Motion to approve.
Support.
Mr. Dabney?
Aye.
Mr. Gallus?
Yes.
Mr. Granquist?
Yes.
Mr. Sperling?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Zimmer?
Yes.
Motion approved.
I'll get these done and I'll call tomorrow and either see them tomorrow or I'll stop you talking about the That's not okay. We just need to, Anthony. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Because the primary was done before. Next item up, Skylar, do you have anything to report?
I I do not have anything to report tonight, but I have talked to our attorney, Mr. Hale, and again, he's been on vacation, but as soon as he gets back, we will start reviewing or probably passing to you. He wants to review them first, but our new documents for subdivision documents, petitions, if you will, and we have a checklist created for that as well to make it a little bit more easy to go through this process from a developer standpoint and also from a general citizen, if you will. So I'd really like to get that approved and get those approved so that we can have those readily available at our office rather than having an application for everything that we do here rather than just condense it. So that's the purpose, is to condense it, make it a one application with checklists and et cetera, where it's a little bit easier for us to handle. So
That sounds great. Thank you. Any old business or any new business? Any general discussion? Any more public comment, Mr. Hendricks? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Support.
We are adjourned.